Mr. Hammer back for the last step, shading. We are going to have a quick, probably 5-minute video on how to spectacularly shade your face here. So as a reminder, you've got your grid here, and you've got all the different squares. And again, you're seeing this project not as if you are doing one drawing on this big paper. You're seeing it instead as 100 little squares, because that's what we have. We have a 10 by 10 grid. So you are doing 100 mini drawings. So for example, there's A1. You would have to transfer the information from A1 to the large A1. A2 to A2. We're going to focus, I'm going to show you how to do the shading. I'm going to focus on A4 because that's got some good amount of information for me to show you. First of all, I'm going to use the square by square helper. I find that could be helpful to you. You may not need it, but I do recommend it. Second of all, I want you to start shading the face first, not the background. Okay, some people, I see them doing their drawings, and they shade the entire background, and then they leave the face till the end, and that's all the hard work. So, I've identified, very importantly, this is D4 here, and I'm going to find D4 over here in my drawing. So here is, let's see if I can make this work. It's turning yellow now. How can we un-yellow things here? How can we un-yellow things here? Let's un-yellow things here and move. I think I'm just going to fold my paper over, which you should not do. Okay, so here's D4 right over here. This square here is D4, and I have D4 over here. Okay, so let's see if I can zoom in a bit. There we go. Okay, D4 and D4. So the shading information I have, first of all, I have this line there that would have already been drawn in. From about here to about here. Now, just like we learned, you are going to use short strokes to shade the areas. That area is really, really dark. So just like we shaded, you're going to stay in that square. You can change direction there and move the pencil in a few different directions. That's fine. It's looking light because you're just getting the sheen. Let's see if I can move the light. So it's actually a darker area than it looks. Just the lighting is making that look different. Let's see if I can fix that later. Okay, now over here, down over here, you've got a darker patch. But I would say that's about 30% of black, maybe 40. So I kind of sometimes like to draw a little line that tells me, okay, Mike, everything down here is going to be that kind of level of darkness. You have to look very carefully. It actually is going dark, light, dark. There's little variations. So there we go. I'm slowly doing this shading. Notice I'm going in different directions. Doesn't really matter if you go in the same direction or not. You can kind of crosshatch. But I'm making the areas that to me look a little bit darker. It's a bit messy, and that's okay. These areas here are lighter, so I'm going to draw them lighter in the background. I can use a bit longer strokes for this so it goes a bit faster. Now notice here on this line over here, it doesn't go straight to dark like I've drawn. It kind of blends and goes slowly darker. So on the boundary here between this part and this part, I'm going to lightly shade right there on the boundary and slowly get lighter so that I gradually am going from dark to light. And then I'm looking back and I see, oh, look at this dark area right here. That's over here. Kind of goes out more like to over here. I'm going to go right to the edge too. Then I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to make this bottom part, this bottom left corner looks a bit darker on the photograph. And I'm just slowly moving around and filling in areas. So as much as possible, this square has the right shading information that is presented here. Now, is it perfect? No. In fact, looking at it here, this area should be even darker. So it's kind of good to go back and check. That could be even darker there and make some changes to it. Now, looking at that square, you'd say, that doesn't look like anything. That just looks like something abstract, and that's okay, because you're going one square at a time. And you would then maybe move down to the square below, and then shade the information there, which is mostly dark, but you have to become sleuths. You are going to start to notice little differences. I don't know if you can see in this point that I'm pointing out here is a little bit darker than the other areas. So you're going to identify 90% dark versus 80% versus 70%. And you're going to become very keen at finding those little differences. And when you step back and all these little squares are done, it's going to look fantastic. So, a recap. Use your square by square helper. Go one square at a time. Transfer the shading information to that square. Now, looking at the whole face, you need to shade at least 90% of your whole drawing. There should be almost no areas that aren't shaded. So, for example, this light area here should not be white. It should be very, very lightly shaded by pressing very lightly. I always say this. Don't be afraid of the dark. People are often afraid to shade their faces very dark. Look how dark these parts are under my nose. They are nearly black. But students are afraid, oh my God, I'm drawing black on my face. This is horrible. One good way to avoid being afraid of the dark, as I like to say it, is to use the square by square helper. Then, if I did that to the nose here, I'm not thinking I'm drawing my nose. I'm just transferring whatever I see there in terms of darkness onto my paper. So I highly recommend using the square by square helper instead of just looking, because when you look, you'll be thinking, oh my God, I can't make it black. You won't even realize you're thinking that, and you'll just do it. And I think that's all the information that I need here to explain to you about shading your face. Hope you enjoyed this video.